Hello. How are you?
We are extremely well.
Me too. This is my first time here. My question, or let me move this a little bit. It's making me feel awkward. This feels better. All right.
They can't hear you.
Oh, well, I'll talk louder. I do have a louder voice. Got a soft voice. Okay. Basically, my question is, I've been thinking about it over seeing everybody's examples and coming up here and being able to express their issues.
That's sort of like finding the receptive mode. It's like through trial and error, you sort of find that place. Yes?
Yes.
And so you said path of least resistance. Path of least resistance for me is to move this out of my face because it does not feel comfortable.
Yes.
But then it turned out not to really be the path of least resistance, did it? It's not right or wrong. It's just the more things that you're taking into consideration, then the more easy it is for you to discover what the path of least resistance really is. Yes?
Yes.
We've used all your time.
Oh, no. Well, can we get to my question right quick? I find myself that I do a lot of things for others very easily. And when someone asks something from me, I can find the people, I can find the motivation within me to be able to do it and do it very well. But I don't find that motivation for myself.
There are a few things that we want to say to you. First, and this is really worth thinking about. First of all, you are an uplifter, and there is nothing in the world inappropriate about being a cooperative component and assisting someone else. So that in and of itself is not something that's gone wrong. In fact, most people would tell you that that's something that is very nice for you to be of service to others. But the reason that it is important to have this conversation with you is because sometimes, Jerry used to say, if you don't have goals of your own, it's easy for you to become part of someone else's goals. He didn't really understand that in terms of vibration in those days. It was just something that he had observed through life. But if you hold back and don't allow yourself to get any momentum going towards something that's important to you, but you do have intentions like being active and being of value and having a good time, then sometimes the path of least resistance is for you to become part of something else that someone has going. For example, let's say that someone has a business enterprise that they've been working on for a while, and they dreamed it into place, and now there are plenty of resources and the world is calling for the products from this in some way, and so there's a lot of momentum that's already going, and now that means that it's a nice place for a lot of other people to dovetail with. It doesn't mean that something has gone wrong because you have joined the momentum of someone else. It just means that you've joined the momentum of someone else. But if you're talking about being of service, meaning you put everyone else first, and this is the telling emotion to let you know if it's on your path or off your path, this desire to dovetail and serve or help. If you find yourself feeling resentment, if you find yourself giving so much of your own time that you are depriving yourself of other things, then there's something that is a little bit out of whack. This is the most significant thing that we have to say about this whole topic, and it's a big topic. When you understand that you are a receiver of this source energy, that you are a focal point for all of this non-physical energy, and that as you practice the receptive mode, that you can stand in a place where you are never depleted. The resourcing of source is so continuous that there is always plenty of clarity and plenty of ideas and plenty of all of the things that you need for your own sustenance. Then you notice that as you dovetail with others, that they simply call through you, and that it is a very satisfying experience for you. And it's not because of the action or the condition that you're participating in, it's because of the vibrational stance that you've practiced before it is summoned through you. Are you following us just a little bit?
Yes, I am.
If you haven't taken the time to get tuned into that. So you're not being replenished. You've got plenty, and so you're yielding and you're giving and you're supporting, but you're not allowing yourself the replenishment that you need. In time, you begin to feel depleted because you've cared more about the things that you really can't control with them, and not enough about your own replenishing of your own resources from your own connection with source. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So what to do about it? Unless you have practiced the feeling of alignment, you can't even begin to sort this out. In other words, if you don't know what it feels like to be tuned in, tapped in, turned on, then you can't begin to sort this out. If you are approaching life, and many are, just from a conditional action orientation, which is what a lot of people are trying to train you to, they'll say to you that you need to be of service, and you need to be able to buck up, and you need to be able to persevere, and you need to be able to dig in, and you need to be able to do what people need you to do. And they teach you those things as attributes. But if they've left out, first, you're wanting to align with source who will continue to resource you, then often it begins to feel like you're being depleted. Last week we had a wonderful discussion. A woman sat in the hot seat and she proclaimed boldly and bluntly, "I feel anger and resentment at greedy rich people." And so we chewed a little bit, much in the same way that we just did with you. And then we explained to her that people have a misunderstanding of economy and value and resources. Most people think that somebody created a big pie and that you all are then participating in the pie, and that the greedy, as she wanted to call them, swoop in and they take more than their fair share of the pie, which leaves not very much pie left for others to sort of quarrel over. And we said the reason that that picture is so flawed is because the factor that is being left out is that the so-called greedy, and of course that was her perspective, they have created their part of the pie. No one takes away from the pie anything that they didn't create to begin with. And if it weren't for their creating of the pie, it would be a much smaller pie. And so it's important to understand that you cannot overserve if you are in alignment with the resources that keep refueling you. And once that's in place, oh, that's what Esther was talking about, as she kept getting those 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 second glimpses where she could see a whole world tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and then law of attraction causing the intertwining with one another for the fun co-creation. So this is a good basis to begin this conversation with, isn't it? You will never have a conversation or a feeling of over-serving if you have first figured out how to keep yourself in tune with the flow of resources. And in fact, the more people call through you, the more come to you. I was visiting with a woman one day, and she was very upset because her husband had been married before, and he was paying child support and alimony, spousal support, to his previous family, his current family that he was not currently living with. And the person that we're talking to is full of resentment because every time he'd made more money, she would go to the court and petition for more money. So it felt like they would never get ahead. And she said, "What can you say to me?" And we said, "We wish he had 10 ex-wives just like that." And she couldn't imagine how that would be helpful. And we said, because the more is called through him, the more he will create. In other words, you can't overserve. The more that you are allowing to be asked through you, then the more resources flow. It's only a question of whether you're keeping that valve open for the flowing. Helpful?
Yes, the aspect of motivating myself, as far as, I can understand that, staying in tune. That way I can always be giving, but giving to myself.
Well,
As far as, motivating myself for my own projects.
there's a difference between motivation and inspiration, and sometimes when other people are calling through you, it is more motivating. Sometimes it is more like motivation because you are aware of negative consequences if you don't, or whatever. But rather than motivation, we really like the idea of inspiration. And inspiration is what we've been talking about all day here today, being in the receiving mode and then receiving the impulse. And so we are certain that you are not without desires. We know that your vortex is filled with enough to keep you busy for 20 or 30 lifetimes. There's no shortage of desire, but there is, even in the statements that you are making, a introduction of resistance to the equation that simply holds you out of the receptive mode. Oh, this is the best part. This is the best thing that you bring to this dialogue. What you're saying, and a lot of people will relate to this, you're gonna like this, we're just gonna savor it ourselves for a minute. It's so good. What you're saying is, it's easier for you to receive the requests of others who speak it to you from their physical form than it is for you to be in the receptive mode where you hear the subtle inspiration that comes from source. Don't you like that? Esther said to Jerry one day, you are so subtle now. I have to tune myself so precisely. It used to be I could just walk in the room, didn't matter what kind of a mood either one of us were in, we were there together and we could have an experience. But now I got to tune to this really squeaky clean frequency in order to even get a whiff of you. And that's where inspiration comes from. You have to tune to a very high frequency, and you don't get there if there's any sort of resentment of what you're doing for others. And we don't feel a strong resentment. We're over speaking that. We know that you are good at what you do and you like to be of value, and people know that you're good at it, and because you've shown that you are, it's easy for people to rely on you. We get all of that. So what you could do to turn it for yourself is just to begin saying, I'm compliant, and law of attraction has set this up, and this is a good thing that I'm doing this, and I'm enjoying it for this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason. And then say to yourself, and this primes the pump for my own alignment, being in my own receptive mode, for my own receiving of my own inspiration. Yeah. And then take it a little further. Others motivate me to act, and that's all right. I'm waiting for the inspiration from my source. And the reason that it is bothering you is because you've received enough of it to know that you can do that. You just don't do it all the time, and you don't do it at will, but you can. Yeah, really good. Yeah. Yeah.